Hello, Simone. Today, we are going to be going into how China is attempting to deal with its demographic catastrophe it's going through. And one of the ways is through changing how marriage and divorce work in the country. And we had seen a tweet that briefly covered some of the changes that they had in this area, but I wanted to go a lot deeper than this particular tweet into the specifics of how things are changing and how people in China are reacting to it and why they think it might work. You ready to dive in, or any thoughts before we go further?
I'm
I mean,
intrigued.
this would happen. We're like, look, people are going to. What's interesting about these changes is I think mini red pillars would probably like a lot of them. So we'll see how this goes. They're not all the worst.
Ooh, okay.
Marriage registration. The revised law proposed in August 2024 and effective as of February 2025 removes regional restrictions on marriage registration, allowing couples to register anywhere in China without needing to return to their household registration hakuku locations. This simplifies the process, aiming to encourage marriage amid demographic crises.
It sounds like marriage before then must have been uniquely difficult. What on earth is this? Like needing to return to...
This is actually a really interesting point. So in China, you are like sort of owned by your starting district often, and to move to a new area, it can be quite difficult and require permission from the central government.
Almost like changing citizenship.
Yeah, almost like changing citizenship. And if you're like a migrant worker or something like that, you often need to go back to your home area for certain like legal things. What's really fascinating about this is where this relates to religious history. A lot of people, like modern historians and stuff like this, have said that they do not believe that Joseph had to return to his hometown during the census, because they're like, that doesn't make sense. How could a Roman census work where literally everyone who had ever moved at some point in their life had to return to their hometown at the same time for a census? And I think what they're not taking into consideration is, one, we see this in other countries like China even today, basically.
Yeah.
And two, not as many people moved in those types of environments where your legal standing was in large part tied to where you were born. Probably in the Roman Empire or something like that. If you moved too far from where you were born, somebody could just take you and say you're their slave, right? Like there wasn't a lot you could legally do. So it was quite dangerous to move long distances during those time periods and try to live somewhere else unless your job was trading. And if you were a trader, you'd have guards and stuff like that. And it was quite a different thing than just like moving. But anyway, I find that to be a good thing. They are loosening bureaucratic bloat.
100%. Yeah.
China's marriage rate has plummeted, with only 6.1 million marriages recorded in 2024, a 20.5% drop from 2023. Year over year, it dropped by over 20%. And this was the lowest since 1986. This decline, coupled with low birth rates, has prompted the government to promote family-friendly policies, quote unquote family-friendly, which is wild. Divorce proceedings. The 30-day cooling off period, first introduced in 2021 under China's civil code, is retained and emphasized in the 2025 revisions. Couples filing for divorce by mutual consent must wait 30 days, during which either party can withdraw the application, effectively halting the process.
Wow.
If no withdrawal occurs, they must reapply within another 30 days to finalize the divorce. Otherwise, the application is automatically withdrawn and canceled.
Oh, so just adding friction to the process. They're reducing friction to get married, adding friction to get divorced.
Exactly. And obviously a lot of people are freaking out about what? What if he's abusive? Well, we'll get to that, because it's not that they haven't thought of that. But anyway. This period has significantly reduced divorce rates, a reported 70% drop in the first quarter of 2021, from 1 million to 296,000. However, it has sparked criticism for delaying or preventing divorces, particularly in cases of domestic violence, despite exemptions for such cases. The point being is that there are actually exemptions for those cases. Not a bad law to implement here in the US. People would go absolutely panic mode if they did. But
yeah, they would.
Anyway, critics argue the cooling off period undermines personal autonomy, with one Weibo user stating, It's easy to get married, but hard to divorce. What a stupid rule. A sentiment that garnered tens of thousands of likes. Why would that be a stupid rule? Why would a government who prefers people being married not want it to be easy to get married and hard to divorce? That's why, if you look at the executive orders we submitted for the Trump administration, we wanted to reduce any tax penalties for marriage. A government should always prefer people to be married. Married people are like just strictly better than non-married people. They commit less crimes, they make more money, they are more stable economically speaking, they make for better parents. They like in every metric, you as a government would prefer to have more of your population married. Any thoughts before I go further?
I agree. Well, I would also add that kids are a lot better off when they have two parents to support them. So yeah, I mean, it's tough. Obviously, it's complicated. And when there is abuse involved, or if a parent is incredibly toxic and putting the kids in danger, it's a very different situation. But yeah, I think being too flippant about both getting married and getting divorced is not a good thing.
Yeah. Ownership based on payment. The 2025 law reportedly shifts property division to favor the spouse who paid for the asset, even if both names are on the title. This marks a departure from the previous norm of equal division of marital property. For example, a husband purchased a property and later added his wife's name to the deed would retain full ownership upon divorce. That's going to piss off women a lot, but it is very sane. I don't understand why that wouldn't be the norm everywhere.
I mean, it really, really, really disincentivizes people from getting divorced when they feel like doing so will protect or enable them to just live financially independently. There will be less financial misaligned incentives.
Yeah. No, and I think that for a lot of women, they're like, well, I gave up my years as a career or whatever, so I deserve a portion of it. Yeah, but the existing system just makes no sense. It doesn't make sense that you should be getting alimony and child payment and half his stuff. As they say, the woman gets half, the man gets a quarter, and the lawyers get a quarter. That doesn't make sense because that almost incentivizes women who are the less interested party in the relationship to initiate a divorce because it can be quite a cushy life.
It's in their financial best interest, especially if they feel like they can trade up. So not only do you end up with more assets than you had coming into the marriage, but you can also do it all over again, which is really bad.
Yeah, just keep playing that game and live like that. And that is...
Now, I would also say, like, those who are arguing this is pushing in people into trad relationships, I would actually argue that there's a world in which this encourages more of what we consider to be trad relationships, which is the corporate family. This is saying, women, if you want to be financially safe, if you want to have an off-ramp from a toxic marriage, you need to maintain some level of income, some kind of career, whether it's from home or remotely or in an office, because if you don't, and you want to leave someday, you will have no savings, you will have no house, you will not have anything. And I think it's really good to have incentives in place that also encourage both partners to be economically productive, possibly even together, maybe from the home, whatever it is. And this does that, which is really great. I think anything that encourages women or any single partner to just sit there and be 100% a homemaker that is not bringing in money is very dangerous, because as you've discussed at length in the Pragmatist Guide to Relationships, this may work for 10, 15, even 20 years. And then it can become extremely unsustainable and toxic in a relationship.
What's interesting is that if we contrast this with what's been happening in the United States in terms of divorce law, it aligns with it to an extent. In 2011, a Supreme Court ruling that family homes purchased before the marriage belonged to the registered buyer, often the husband, which disadvantaged women due to cultural norms where men typically provide homes. Sorry, that was almost certainly a different tick than the first one. So we likely have multiple ticks on us.
Okay. Well, the really important thing that you need to make sure you do going forward is not walk through that deer field. We need to walk around where the grass is mowed. I know you like taking the shortcut, but that is almost 100% where you got that tick. So
you are absolutely right, Simone.
So let's carry on. You're talking about how this was similar to a shift in U.S. divorce law that also allowed men to keep the house.
Yeah, which just seems sane. Like, especially if women are waiting on a man to be that financially stable before marrying him. I can understand being like, okay, you work together, you got married at a young age, you didn't know how much money he'd make at that time. That's different than you married a guy who's already rich. You absolutely should have no claim to that house.
Yes. Well, I mean, There's something to this concept of commingled assets, whereby if there's some basis, I think at least in many states, for there being collaboration on behalf of the couple on certain assets, like investments, then they get split. And if they were things that were just maintained separate the whole time, like some investment account that only you kept and I never was involved with, then it's much easier for you to argue in a divorce case that you get to keep that. And I think that if a couple grows up together and one decides to work and the other decides to stay home with kids, that, you know, the house that they buy with the income from the one parent made possible by the other parent staying home, that's more arguably something that should be split, right? Like, I also don't think that in cases where couples are making difficult trade-offs, there should be no consideration of things like that. But absolutely, like if someone bought this with their own money ahead of time, there's no right the other partner has to it. I think this more is a nuanced situation that comes up when there is a trade-off between, you know, career choices and especially child rearing choices.
Yeah. So next, ex post claim this rule makes it impossible for some women to take financial advantage of marriage, reflecting a perception that it closes legal loopholes. Properties gifted to the husband by his parents are explicitly excluded from shared matrimonial property and remain his sole property post divorce. This provision reinforces the traditional practice where families offer the groom invest in homes for the couple, but it can leave women with little to claim to assets they may have contributed to indirectly through household labor. This rule has fueled debates about fairness, as women in China often face economic disadvantages, including a gender income gap and limited property ownership. Well, first, I don't know if they have a gender income gap there. I know that people lie about that in the United States, so like that makes me suspicious of it everywhere. Just so people know, there isn't a gender income gap in the US when you control for like hours put in and everything like that. And there is, however, I should say, an explicit gender income gap for younger Americans, but women make more than men. So, like, yes, there is economic disparity, and it's that we need to start prejudicing against women.
Well, and if anything, the disadvantage that women have income-wise is due to cultural disparities, like women feeling like they need to be the one to scale down or start working part-time because they want to be the one to take their kid to the doctor. They want to be the one to do this or that. And in our relationship, for example, Malcolm does all that. And so it doesn't have to be that way. But I think a lot of women just either want to do that. They want to spend more of their time parenting. So they choose to work less. And then therefore they end up making less. Like there are long-term career impacts, of course, to having gaps in your resume. And so I would say the measurable aspects, when you say controlling for other things, a lot of it's controlling for these culturally driven decisions that women make with regard to their careers that affects lifetime income.
Yes, absolutely. And I'd also note here that people can be like, well, that seems totally reasonable that, you know, because the money was given to the man by his parents, right? The problem becomes it's not as bad in China because you have so many single, you know, parent households, right? Like they're parents to one kid. But if you have a son and a daughter, you pay for your son's house, but not your daughter's house because the parents of the man who she married pay for that.
Yeah.
Which is why this systemically disadvantages women.
Yeah.
And it can be fixed by creating situations where you pay for your children regardless of their genders. But then people say, well, then I won't secure as good of a woman, or I won't secure any woman as well, because there's, you know, far fewer women than men in China due to the one child system and them like exposing, you know, female babies and stuff like that, which, you know, just puts them in a terrible situation. A lot of people in China just aren't going to get a partner. And I don't know what to say about that.
Not good.
Impact and controversy. Gender inequality concerns. Feminist critics, such as writer Zhao Meilin, argue that law restricts women's rights to seek separation, particularly as women initiate 74% of divorce cases. The cooling off period is seen as a step backwards, potentially trapping women in unhappy marriages. You know, it's like, okay, if they're initiating 74% of divorces, that makes it sound like women are the problem. Not the men. That's not a thing to brag about. Property division changes exacerbate these concerns as women who contribute non-financially, e.g. childcare and housework, may receive little or no compensation. A 2024 study by Yale sociologist Emma Zhang found that the 2011 property ruling reduced women's well-being by limiting their economic autonomy, though some couples adapted by adding wives' names to deeds. Okay. In cases of domestic violence, the cooling off period's exemption is inconsistently applied, with reports of courts denying divorces despite evidence of abuse. For example, a 2019 case involving a woman assaulted by her husband required public pressure via social media to secure a divorce. Now, I'll
Hmm.
note, when you get something like this is a direct result of people who didn't take pronatalism seriously. This is what you get. This is a natural result of not taking pronatalism seriously.
Yeah. Not ideal.
Yeah. Social
Women's
media
rights do get eroded as panic sets in. Didn't have to be this way.
Yeah. Social media backlash. The law has generated significant online criticism, with Weibo hashtags about the draft law garnering over 500 million views in August 2024. Users have called it unfair, with one stating, "When they want you to do something, they'll simplify the process, but when they don't, there will be endless procedures." Well, I mean, yeah, that is what was going to happen as a result of you guys not getting married and having kids.
Yeah.
Duh. On X, posts reflect polarized views. Some praise the law for protecting men's assets and closing loopholes, while others highlight negative impact on women, particularly in abusive situations. These posts often lack primary sources and should be treated as inconclusive. Women have also used platforms like Zhangzhe to celebrate divorces, with divorce parties gaining popularity, signaling a cultural shift towards viewing divorce as empowerment rather than stigma. Well, that's not good when that's happening. By the way, I noticed here when I was reading like on X, the whole like X Twitter thing, like the naming of it. I feel like X is actually gaining traction and becoming a bit normalized now.
Yeah, I think we're getting used to it finally.
It sounds cooler than Twitter and
Yeah.
more masculine. It's like when they rebrand like Diet Coke to Coke Zero, so that men
Yes.
are okay with drinking it. That's what I feel like it was from Twitter to X. It's a version of Twitter that's like manly. Even the logo looks like one of those manified like shaver logos or something, or
So
like,
true. Yeah.
just so you know that like if you're uncomfortable using this product as a man, like this is an extra manly
It's
product.
okay now. It's okay.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, by the way, I don't know if you'd heard, but all of these people have been so proud of their blue check mark in San Francisco. It became like a common thing to buy these like blue check mark like things, like tokens for like the side of your house. You know how you would have like a fire ornament in like Philadelphia or something
Oh my gosh.
to show like I'm a blue check mark house.
No.
And then when
Dude.
Elon bought the platform, they all started like freaking out and taking them down and having these, because it costs like
You would need
100,000 to get the company to. There's people you could pay. I think it was 100,000, right, to get a blue check mark for yourself.
No, I think you just need to know who to contact and have a
No,
name.
it was 10 to 100,000. Yeah, but if you don't know who to contact, there were agents who specialized in getting you these.
I didn't know anything about that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Mutual agreement. Couples can divorce through civil bureau if they mutually agree on the terms, including property division and child custody. This process requires a written agreement and is subject to a 30-day cooling off period. Litigation. If mutual agreement fails, divorce proceeds through litigation, where courts evaluate grounds like adultery, domestic violence, abandonment, or breakdown in mutual affection. Courts often favor mediation to preserve marriages, and first-time divorce petitioners are frequently denied to maintain quote-unquote social stability. Grounds for divorce. Adultery can influence property division and custody, but is not criminalized. Domestic violence, while a valid ground, often requires substantial evidence, and cultural biases in courts hinder women's cases.
Yeah. What about domestic violence? That's scary. To not be able to get out of a marriage that's like that is that's not ideal. But again, China is going to like this is only just the beginning of what China is going to start doing as they get desperate.
Yeah. So I decided to go into what else China is doing to increase its fertility rate. There you have financial incentives. Childcare subsidies are a key measure intended to reduce the financial burden of families. Reports from March 2025 highlight these subsidies as part of a broader strategy discussed at China's political meetings, aiming to hit economic growth target of 5%. Free preschool education is another initiative. And then you've got healthcare support, expanded state healthcare support for childbirth, and improved pediatric services designed to lower medical expenses. Social measures. Encouraging marriage is seen as a precursor to higher birth rates. Notably, Shandong Suning Chemical Group issued a memo in 2025 requiring unmarried workers aged 28 to 58 including divorced individuals, to marry by September 30 as their phased termination, framing non-marriage as disloyalty and unfilial.
That's insane. Can you imagine the freak out in the United States if suddenly you were going to lose your job for not getting married? And I wonder what sorts of marriages of convenience, complete sham marriages this is going to produce. Like, this is the kind of policy that just is going to backfire. It's not going to get people to marry for the right reasons. And this is something we talk about with prenatalist policy a lot. It has to be endogenous. It can't be exogenous. You can't force it upon people. It has to come from within. And if you don't fix your culture, if you don't fix hope for the future, you're not going to do that.
Yeah, the group reversed this, by the way. They didn't. They ended up getting talked about. I imagine as such. I imagine it was somebody who like had some like he's running the company, but he also had some sort of a CCP position. He's like, I know what I'll do to help them with their fertility rate. I'll force everyone in my company to get married. But I can see this becoming more normalized around the world in the future. Like, this is like the first instance in which we're like, oh my God, can you believe? But I would not be surprised if we actually see quite a lot of that in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Some districts are also considering a 3-child policy, a shift from a former 1-child policy to encourage larger families, which they've been doing for a while. What, Simone, what's so silly about our baby?
She's being mischievous on purpose, but in a really sweet way that, of course, means she's super related to us.
Oh, no, you made a mischievous baby?
Me? I
didn't contribute to this.
I was not mischievous. I was a very, very well-behaved child.
Okay, so I think that these sorts of changes are things that we're going to expect sort of everywhere.
Yeah.
In countries where I think one thing that we definitely won't expect is things to get better for women. Give women more autonomy, make it easier for women to divorce, make it easier. Like, you are not going to see that going forwards. And people can be like, oh, women's rights are being rolled back. And it's like, well, it's basically like we gave you like when I give one of my kids like a privilege or a toy and I'm like, yeah, but don't do something bad with this.
Right.
And they immediately go and do something bad with it. That's what women basically did.
This is why you can't have nice things, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm saying this is what you get.
I mean, so I like some things about this. I like that China is looking at regulatory barriers and regulatory bloat and playing with those levers, making it, for example, easier to get married. And I think that in the United States, before things get bad for women, there are so many nice for everyone things that can be made so much easier that are, for example, related to the executive orders we submitted to the Trump White House. For example, most middle-class couples in the United States are penalized on their taxes for getting married. They pay more in taxes for getting married, which of course disincentivizes people from getting married. So if we were to remove that tax penalty, we could increase probably our rates of marriage in the United States. Same with things like daycare regulation and car seat regulation, free-range child laws. So I think there's so much that can be done. And I like that China is looking at regulation. And I think this is why many people have lauded, like many intellectuals online are lauding what China is doing. So like, oh, look, like they're trying to play with levers of policy to really address demographic collapse, which is a super big deal.
Here's the fun one.
I don't think they're not doing it in a way where I feel like it's going to make enough of a difference. And they're also not making life materially better for people who choose to create families in a way that gets them excited or makes them like, I don't see how this is going to make it easier for couples who want to have more kids to do so. And it's only sort of making it scarier to get married, which is, just making it easier to get married. I don't think is now going to address the chilling effect that has been placed on marriage by what will be like a lot of social media campaigns of like, I can't get out of this abusive relationship because of China's evil, misogynistic laws. And then women are gonna be like, well, I'm just never going to get married because that's obviously a scam now. That's obviously to trap me. And once I'm in, I can't get out. And the government's out to get me for this. So I think this is going to backfire. And as much as I love the general concept and, the spirit, it's so sweet, but it's wrong. And this is really going to hurt them in the end.
Well, it's funny that you say that because they're already working on solutions.
Oh, yeah?
One is the National Committee of Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or the CPPCC, which proposed
rolls off the tongue.
Lowering the legal age of marriage from 22 for men and 20 for women to 18, aiming to quote unquote unleash reproductive potential.
My God, China really did not like families and children. I mean, you can get married in the US when you're 18.
You can get married
You
at
don't have to go to
14
your
in some
local
states.
province to get married in the United States. So it's really insane to me
I
that
think in a lot of, not a lot of, in a few of the southern states, age of consent is as low as 14 if you have been married by that age, which
right,
is
but you need your parents' permission to marry.
right. But you need your parents' permission to marry, right?
Yeah.
Of course, they've got safeguards in place for 14-year-olds marrying.
As long as mommy and daddy say it's okay.
Anyway, but yeah, one of my favorite things is they've been changing a lot of the statues that used to have like one child, and now they're putting in like
Yeah, suddenly a child has appeared. Child number 3.
two extra
Child
children
number 2.
appeared. Yeah. Oh, look at this.
Yeah. It's hilarious.
But that's what we need to do is start making pro-natalist propaganda art with AI and spamming the world with it. Just put it all over our house.
Someone on X has been trying to do that. They created an image of the Mona Lisa with a baby. Isn't there speculation that the Mona Lisa either is pregnant or recently postpartum? Anyway, I don't know.
What was the speculation from?
Art historians? Am I crazy? Hold on. Mona Lisa pregnant. There we go. The theory that Mona Lisa was pregnant is a popular but unproven speculation. In 2006, researchers used high-resolution imaging techniques to study the painting. They found evidence of a subtle veil around the subject's neck, which is similar to veils worn by pregnant women in the Renaissance period. Additionally, the subject's face appears slightly fuller, and her hair is slightly disheveled, which could be signs of pregnancy. Okay, that's pushing it. I get you.
That's pushing it, Simone. You crazy bee.
Fine, whatever.
Anyway, well, what are we doing for dinner tonight?
I was going to do more of your pineapple mango curry.
Love it.
I have a little bit more. You can have that with either hash browns or rice or naan.
Whatever.
Or
easy.
plantains with it, which I can try to like spice this time.
No, the plantains were so gross last time.
You asked for it.
I know, and we tried it, and it wasn't good. It wasn't that you did a bad job cooking them. I just forgot how tasteless they are.
Mm.
I thought they tasted a little bit of banana. I was like, oh, that would be interesting. Instead, it's probably better to do something like banana rice.
Or just to like pan fry banana.
Yeah.
Or caramelize it. If you take a blowtorch to sugar on top of a banana, you get sort of this banana creme brulee. You get that.
You know what I think would
caramelized
taste
sugar.
pretty interesting is
Yeah.
if you blended a banana and mixed it with rice before cooking the rice to create banana rice.
If you want me to do that, Malcolm.
Am I murdering you with my culinary genius?
Yeah, I'm. For you, I'll try. I'll try.
So, have I annoyed you to death?
Never. You charm me.
You are amazing. And the interview we did before this was ABC, went pretty well.
No, that was with USA Today.
Or USA Today.
They're all blending.
By the way, I had a tick crawling on me during the interview that I had to flick off and not show too much.
Oh my gosh.
So
Is
check
it
for tick.
crawling around in your room?
With it crawling on my hand, it probably crawled on from the jacket that I put back on after, for filming.
Yeah, definitely. We'll check for ticks.
They clamp down hard on the ladies' rights in lands where the birth rates fade from sight. China's cribs are empty, the nurseries bare. We warned them, folks, but they didn't care. The culture wars raged, we screamed and we fought. Said freedom for women's a right hard bought. But when babies don't come, the future's a ghost. We told them, my friends, they'll regret it the most. Oh, we told you so. When the wombs went cold, the warnings we gave, they were brash and bold. If you cage the free and you kill the spark, your culture's a grave, just a shot in the dark. The cities grow quiet, no kids in the streets. The schools shut down, no tiny heartbeats. You can't force a birth with a law or a chain. We said it'd go wrong, now feel the pain. Societies crumble when choice is a crime. No babies, no future, just wasting time. You need love and trust to make life anew. We warned them, oh man, but they never knew. Oh, we told you so when the wombs went cold. The warnings we gave, they were brash and bold. If you cage the free and you kill the spark, your culture's a grave, just a shot in the dark. Now the old folks sigh, no heirs to their name. The system's a mess, but who's to blame? You can't breed hope with a fist held tight. We screamed it for years, give women their rights. The numbers don't lie, the stats are grim. Fertility's tanked, the outlook's dim. If you want a future, let freedom sing. We told them, goddamn, it's a simple thing. But cultures that bind, they'll fade and they'll fall. No kids to inherit, no one to call. You can't build the world on control and fear. We warned them, oh shit, now the end's drawing near. Oh, we told you so when the wombs went cold. The warnings we gave, they were brash and bold. If you cage the free and you kill the spark, your culture's a grave, just a shot in the dark. So raise a glass to the ones who tried, who begged for choice, for the dream up and died. We told you so, yeah, we screamed it loud. Now your empire's dust, just a ghost in the crowd.